Yes, once the plan is developed, and I'm sure you either develop the whole plan or work with Danny on developing the plan, and we are ready to implement the plan, how are you involved then?
So if you're talking just about streets, is that what you're referring to?
Yes,
Yeah, so typically what happens is I would get together, and in this case with Denny, we would come out and review all the situation. Um, Generally, a municipality has an idea of what they would like to do. Then I would take the measurements that I need to take and needed to spend out there to evaluate the street and calculate up the quantities, uh, get an estimate of cost back to you that's going to be viable for that particular year. Because as you know, estimates of cost from time to time, whether that's year by year or within that year. The sooner you get that out for bid, the better off you are usually in the prices. You don't want to necessarily wait again, as you guys know, you don't want to wait till middle of June, July before you're bidding out your projects. Then that would go then to the for approval. Then it would go to IDOT for approval. And then there's 2 weeks where IDOT has it in their bulletin. Once it's approved, it would come back to the municipality with the recommended low bidder. And then after that, contracts are sent to the contractor. And then we are doing the construction observation when that happens. We do the final pay estimate, final out the MFT paperwork that needs to be done, and then complete the motor fuel tax portion of that for that year.
okay, thank you. If the work is under $25,000 and no bid is required, is their process much different?
Yes, it is. No bid greatly reduces your engineering fees. IDOT has a standard chart that they charge percentages on for motor fuel tax funds. And when you do a 25,000 or under, that's like you said, a no bid process. And that greatly reduces your engineering fees. You don't have to put it out for bid. The most beneficial part of that, I believe, is the timing. When stuff to IDOT, right now it's taking about a month and a half to 2 months for them to review. Sometimes it's better, but as of right now, I know IDOT's been making a lot of cuts, and they so that lengthens the time frame they have to review. So if you have that 25,000 or under, that allows you to speed up that process. Normally, you would still have that queue, but you would definitely avoid the 2 weeks, and then avoid the sending back and forth of the contracts.
Okay, if there's no bid, do you work with the contractor to verify that they will do X amount of work for Y amount of dollars?
Yes, yes. If you're talking about seal coating, and that's something that we've done with different municipalities. If it's too small of a bid for, let's say, anything that might be 25,000 or under, you might have a higher price. We know what prices should be based on data and the companies, the contractors that we deal with. So sometimes I might even recommend to you, hey, maybe it's something that we want to wait till next year and couple up a bigger project so you get a better unit price. But in the event that you would have to happen, that you would have your 25,000 or under, yes, we would be out there. In fact, I was just last week with Spring Bay, the village of Spring Bay. They only do a job once every 3 or 4 years, it seems like. But it's in their best interest right now, because they have a meeting once a month, that it's going to be better if they do that small $25,000 project with a no bid, or just wait till next year when they have some additional funds where they can get out to bid much earlier. We just had a bid last week. We had 6 municipalities bid last week, about $1.5 million of worth of seal coating. And we came in about $300,000 under. And I believe that's because of how quickly we got the bids out. We start talking generally in the fall, November, December, and try to get that into IDOT's hands in January, and then try to have those bids in February, March at the latest.
Any of the other trustees have questions? Denny, did you have any more questions, or?
I have one.
Conversations with Pat about different things that he does, and so I don't have any further questions for him.
Jeff, did you say you had one?
Yes, I'm Jeff. I'm the water superintendent, Pat.
Hi, Jeff.
So you're kind of a single engineer, basically. So if we had a bigger project like a sewer, and you mentioned that you would hire probably field crews from some other company, am I correct with that? Like a sewer project, we're talking, the scope of work is big, and you don't employ a field crew to go out and get your data, right?
We have 2 or 3 employees that we
Okay.
hire during the summer for construction reasons, but those are mainly geared towards roadways. So
Right.
if we have a water or sewer project, what we would generally do is partner with a Moore Kerr Engineering. They're out of Peoria, and or a Maurer Stutz Engineering, which is also out of Peoria. And it's a benefit to us to be able to do it that way, because we can keep our overhead down at a reasonable rate. And you can definitely hire those bigger firms. But generally what we've seen is that what a municipal generally needs is that person for everyday type stuff.
Yep.
At a lower cost. But when those bigger projects do come on, we're equipped to do that. In fact, in the city of Delavan, we're just starting the first of 5 years of water main projects. The other thing that we're doing there is a slip lining of their sanitary sewer. So if things come up that are too big for me to handle, I do have my relationships out there, and we go back and forth, because they hire me back for small municipal MFT work also.
Yeah. I spent 10 years in the business.
Great.
I worked in the field crew. So that was one of my concerns is the not having a full-time field crew. And the scope of the sewer work is enormous.
Yes.
When you talk about going out and surveying the whole town and laying out a sewer, it's going to be quite a project. So that was one of my concerns, but it sounds like you got it worked out between they give you work and you give them work, so that works out.
Yes, and in the late 90s, we did an entire sewer for the village of South Lincoln. And I remember that was when I was with another engineering firm right before I went out on my own. And I realized the amount of work that went involved in that. So that is a full design of the entire system. And definitely we had a person out there every day. I mean, it was their job to be out there essentially for a year.
Just the field work in that scenario in a town of 1,800 with 679 customers or houses, water customers. How long is that scope of work, you think?
our town in the late 90s that I was speaking of was South Peak, and it's 1,000. So I would gather that you're going to be 1.5 to 2 years, depending on your contractor's efficiency.
And that's just the field work and,
Yes,
yeah, okay,
to build. Yes.
yes.
The one thing we learned that I remember distinctly from that, you don't recognize until you've been through it how much of a mess it's going to make for the town. I mean, because you're going to have cuts through the streets and people's yards, and those all have to be taken care of. And part of our, I believe part of our downfall as engineers is we're not very good communicators sometimes. And to be able to talk with the resident about the scope of what's going to happen in their particular yard or on their particular street, I think that's important. And again, I would say that we as a profession fail in that regard for communication with the average Joe out there that just needs to know, hey, how is this going to affect me? And I feel like that's where we succeed, my firm and my employees that we work with. We're able to communicate that with the residents.
Thank you, Pat.
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Jeff, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions? If not, Pat, I want to thank you for your time tonight, and your willingness to join us. Zoom has worked real well for us for meetings like this, so we're glad you were able to participate. You are welcome to stay for the budget discussions we're going to have. It's kind of like, a glass of warm milk and a book at night to put you to sleep, so you may not want to.
If that's okay, I think I will pass on. I am heading to another meeting. You may be able to take in my car. So I appreciate you guys entertaining me, zooming in and accommodating that in that regard.
Did you have any questions for us, Pat?
I don't. I'm looking forward to if it works out for you guys. Looking forward to being a part of the team and helping out where I can.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
I'm sure Danny will be in touch with you.
Thanks, Pat.
All right. Next item on the agenda is to go ahead and start with our budget discussion. And I wanted to get a little bit of an early start on budget this year and have one meeting in February to cover some of the high level stuff. When I looked at the audit reports we're getting and tried to make sense out of the numbers, I saw one of the reports on water. It looked like we had lost $1,800 last year, but we had put a lot of money in reserves, almost 100,000. When I looked at the general fund, it looked reasonably well, but there were some expenditures there, disbursements that made no sense. So I've been working with Sarah and our auditors, and Sarah's been great getting information for us. Trying to get an understanding of where we're at with budget, what kind of overall shape we're in, and why some of the numbers that are on our budget and on our audit reports are what they are. So I tried to put a high level stuff on this sheet here, because I really think it's necessary for the trustees to have a reasonably good understanding of where the village is financially. How much money do we have in savings or in reserves? How much of that's allocated, and how much do we take in and spend every year? Some of that's fairly easily to get off the reports we work with, but some of it's not. So there are a few things yet we're still checking on, but we've identified most of the questions I had. The second paragraph, if you look at our real estate taxes compared to other towns, we're in great shape. We're a lot cheaper than most other towns in the county. I have not done any comparison to other states. And tax rates are easy to compare, but costs are very difficult to compare. When you try and compare items, I tried to compare police. I thought, well, that'd be a good one. Let's see how much we spend on police compared to everybody else. And so I averaged it out per citizen, and it was anywhere from 50 to about $175 a person that the different villages were spending on police. And then I got to thinking, you don't know what goes into the police expenses on the report. You know, are retirement funds in the police report, the police portion, or are they in the general fund? Or does a police car purchase come out of reserve, or is that out of the regular police report? So it's really difficult to compare your expenses to other villages' expenses until you sit down and talk to them. So at a high level, you can see what their overall revenues and expenses are, but it's difficult to get down and break it down. So I want to compliment the village leadership in the past. I think, in my opinion, they've done a lot of things right. We're debt free. There aren't a lot of towns that can say that. I think a lot of our equipment is in excellent shape overall. In general fund, our reserve is about $450,000 right now. In water fund, we're around $1.5 million. Overall, our expenses have been managed quite well. When we do our budget, the amount of cash or receipts we think we might get, we're conservative with that part of it. So we generally don't go over budget. And I think that's all part of 30 or 40 years of management by Hudson trustees and mayors in the past. I think we're in great shape. From an audit perspective, we have a reserve amount, and that includes what I'll call allocated reserves, which we have in our budget worksheet, the last worksheet that Sarah will put together for us this year. That has reserves for future purchases of water equipment or backhoes or trucks and police cars, that type of thing. And it's the other part of this is unallocated reserves, which is out there for an emergency type fund or a special fund. We have about 95,000 allocated, and that leaves about 350,000 unallocated in our reserve funds. The water reserves out of the $1.5 million, we have about 33,000 allocated right now. $1.5 million may seem like a lot in water, but if you have to start replacing a big pipeline someplace, you're gonna suck up $1 million or $2 in no time. So it's good to have, but it could go in a hurry, I guess is what I'm gonna say. I think paying the water tower could be 250 to 300,000 just all by itself, so.
Is that money like CDs or something? Or?
Some of it's CD, some of it's cash. Sarah, do you have a good feeling?
I don't have it with me. There's some in CDs and some
Okay.
just in the mail.
So at a high level, that's kind of where we're at money wise. For the year coming up, I'm trying to make some impacts on revenue. And Sarah, if I try not to steal any of your work here.
No, go for it. You're fine.
I think most of our revenues will be stable compared to last year. The one change we'll see in real estate taxes is we are taking out the garbage charge, replacing it with other charges. So from a homeowner's perspective, their bill isn't going to change, but the categories within the bill will be changed. So we're making an adjustment there to make sure we're doing everything 100% correct. So we have been raising our tax levy, and we put that out in November and December. We've been going up about 5% every year, which as a taxpayer, some years my taxes go up, some they go down. So of course, because it depends a little on how much the other improvements are for the other homes or how many new homes are built, that type of thing. So, I don't know if any of you read the newsletter that came out from IML yesterday. Governor Pritzker's budget initially indicated that the state was gonna keep 10% of the income tax payments that currently go to municipalities, which would have meant our income tax revenue would be going down 10% for next year. But in the next sentence, it said they're going to try and make some tax changes, which would put some of that money back in our pockets. So we're gonna have to help her out here the best we can and say, yeah, let's keep the income tax revenue flat, or we'll look for the worst case, go down 10%, or we'll look for the best case, go up 10%. So that's gonna be changing, and try and pay attention to the IML newsletters and see what kind of information you can uncover. Utility tax revenue has gone down due to decreases in natural gas costs. Sales tax revenue is gonna increase for the Dollar General. We've only had one payment, I think, since they opened. So it's a tough call how much revenue we're gonna get. So Sarah will talk a little bit about that when we get there.
Yeah, this one payment we've got was almost $1,000 more. So we'll see if that continues or not. Obviously, it's new and exciting right now, so definitely need a difference.
Okay, and those of you that have been on the board, remember, we used to get a gaming tax, and then we didn't get one for a while because we were getting the gaming tax from Lake Bloomington, which we shouldn't have been. So we quit getting it until that broke out, and they got that money back, and so we're past that, we're starting to get it now. So we'll get gaming tax revenue again next year. New major expenses. We move forward with the sewer study. I believe Farnsworth estimated that our share of the cost, even if we get the grant, is probably gonna be $20,000 to $25,000. So we need to think about getting that in the budget. If we move forward with the real estate purchase we talked about, the new utility cost could be $6,000 to $10,000 a year there. If we build the sidewalk to Dollar General, I don't know how much of that will come out of NFT and how much of it would come out of the general fund. So, and we'll know more about that. I think there's more work with NFT. But that's one of our top hopes is to get that sidewalk done. So some of that money may need to come out of the general fund. Miscellaneous, Dale's gonna be retiring in November. We will need a replacement for him. So we'll have about 3 months or so where we'll need to pay for 2 police chiefs. Another potential major expense that I don't have down here is, we've been talking a lot about an IT guy. And we hired Nicholas to do a lot of work for us. But it would be nice if we had somebody that we could get out here more regular because we have some kind of arrangement with them for doing IT work. Nicholas has done great work for us. I'm not saying he has to be that person, but we need to think about budgeting for that. So we can get a little better IT service and more help. So we will be doing some work in IT as far as getting some inventories done, which we can do a lot of that work. But we also need to get some network inventory done, get a handle on our network, and things like that. It's gonna take an IT expert to get that type of information. So we may wanna put an IT guy on a retainer or hire him for 1 day a week or something like that. I don't know how, but we could sure use IT.
So 10% of income tax would be like 18 grand, am I looking at our last budget, right?
Yeah, it was 180,000.
Okay.
Yep, not devastating, but definitely noticeable. So, okay, I want to cover the next couple pages for a minute, and the next page, I don't know mine I got them stapled backwards here, I guess. The general fund, okay, I know what this is. The budget categories that we're gonna be working on most are the general fund and the water. They're the two that we have the most control over. The audit fund is, basically a break-even type fund. We have real estate tax money coming in to pay for it. And we have the single annual audit expense, and that's pretty much a wash. We try and take in about 8,000 on that, and the audit cost is 8,000. So nothing really to do there. Garbage fund is pretty straightforward. Currently, the money is collected with the water bills, and then the money goes into, Sarah, does it go into a garbage fund or the general fund to pay?
It'll go from the water fund to the garbage fund.
To the garbage fund and gets paid out of there.
Yeah.
So we will be doing the fund before we award a garbage contract. We'll be doing our budget. But that doesn't mean that once we go out and bid the contract, if the garbage rates go up quite a bit, we can still change the billing. I believe the garbage billing without redoing the budget. Or if we get a better deal and the charges go down, we could reduce the garbage charges without redoing the budget.
Also, talking to the auditor, it sounds like now that we've taken garbage out of our levy, we can do away with the garbage fund because it's been in and out pretty much, and it can just stay in water now.
Okay, so this
Next year, that's probably what we'll do, how much she's looking for.
probably going all together.
Yep.
Okay. TIF funds, we don't have any control over the revenues for TIF. We have control over the expenses, but there's really no budget work we do with TIF, very little. So we're not gonna spend any time over the next couple days, over the next couple months really doing much with TIF. Motor fuel, Denny, and whoever the engineer is for the motor fuel tax, take care of that. So the general fund and the water funds are the two areas where we spend 90% of our time when we work with the budget. So the next couple pages just talk about the general fund and the water fund. And what I wanted to show on these two pages is our income and expenses for the general fund and where our reserves are at with the general fund. And if you look at the top spreadsheet on the high level overview of the finances general fund page, the fourth line down is cash receipts. It shows what we budgeted and what we actually took in for the last 5 years. So I looked at this and I looked at our actual budget. In 2016, it was $613,000. 2017, it went up to 634. 2018 dropped a little bit to 628. 2019, it went up to 646. 2020, it went down to 601,000. So we had a big decrease in revenues, which the audit reports don't explain. And Sarah and I sat down and Sarah did some digging and found out what caused that decrease. And in the first line of the notes, it shows that's the year that the Kiwanda police protection was dropped. And so that's why our revenues went down 45,000. So, but when I first looked at it, without doing a lot of digging, I thought, why did our revenues go down? What did we do different? So we have an explanation on that. And then I also wanted to look at the cash disbursements and the net change in the fund balance. And the cash disbursements should be a summary of all of our expenses pretty much for that year. And the expenses show, if you look from over the last 5 years, they're fairly level until, again, 2019 to 2020. We just saw our revenue drop $45,000, but our expenses went up over 50,000, almost $60,000. So Sarah, again, thanks to Sarah, we did some digging and we found that there were a couple things that happened that caused that increase in revenue. One, increase in expenses. We paid for half of the salt truck, the new salt truck out of that year's budget, so that was about 30,000 of it. And the tricky thing was on line 3 there in the notes. I'm sorry, that's not the tricky thing. The rest of the dump truck and the backhoe is gonna be paid for out of the budget that's pending now. So that'll look like a big revenue decrease for next year, or a big expenditure. Even though we set aside money every year in our reserves, it looks like a big chunk that we spent. And there's no good way to show that it came from reserves rather than from the cash flow that we took in that year. So the next big item there, and I'm gonna have you go back to the back page for just, and look at the bottom line in the notes. This year, or 2019 to 2020, the water assets were increased by 89,000 to correct an error from 5 years ago. And we don't know
It's not
exactly.
necessarily, it's not necessarily an error. Basically, the due to and due from account had money sitting in it that should have been transferred from the general to the water, and we just never did it at all. It just sat there. So she cleaned that up this year, so that's why you're seeing that this year, is that it's finally got moved to water where it should have been. So it's just sat there and they got it taken care of. So it's not like we're missing that money or it's just sitting in due to, due from.
Mistake was a very bad choice of words in life.
No, you're good. I was just trying to explain what it was.
If you guys listening, you know.
Yeah, listen, I should just let Sarah explain this, but it's $89,000 that looks like it's going out of this year's or out of 2020's general expense funds, when it should have gone out 3 or 4 years
Years ago, yeah.
So when we look at the actual fund balances, the change to fund balances over the last 5 years, you can see every year they've gone up, and they've gone up quite a bit in 2018 and 2019. In 2020, it only went up $2,000. Well, that's because of the $89,000 transfer to the water fund and the $31,000 that we paid for half of the bill. So when you see the numbers and the budget reports and then the audit reports, try and put everything together, it's difficult when I'm trying to get some notes like this together. Then the second table in the general fund there is our actual reserves. The line from the second from the bottom shows the reserve amount at the end of those budget years. And the change in the reserve amount is listed in the very last line. And again, the $102,000 decrease between 2019 and 2020 was due to the payment for the salt truck and the $89,000 transfer to the water fund. So the reserves for general fund did go down, but I have a feeling that was a one-time type thing. It's not a trend. So we know that the reserves will be hit again next year because we're paying $90,000 for the balance for the backhoe and the other half of the salt. So our total reserve amount will go down again next year, but then it should start going back up. Okay, on the last sheet, kind of where our water is at. Like I said, water scared me for a while, and looked at the audit report, it looked like we had lost $2,000 on water operating revenue and expenses. And we even had Sarah's first call to the auditor, told us how to figure it. And the way they figured it, it showed a $2,000 loss. And Jeff has been doing some other calculations based on our monthly budget reports and knew that that wasn't right. So again, Sarah did some more digging and found out that in the operating expenses, depreciation was included as an operating expense, which shouldn't be for what we want to look at. So we added depreciation back in, and now you can see that we're running about 30,000 a year profit for the last 3 years. And the reserves, a couple of years are real close. The reserve for 2020 is 112,000 instead of 30. That's primarily because we transferred the 89,000 from the general fund to the water fund. So that's why the water reserve went up so much this last year. So our water profit has been about 30,000 a year now. The profit for the water fund or for the general fund does not include anything that we want to set aside for reserves. This is just pure cost. So reserve expenses are something else. We have a big bucket of reserves. From the auditor's perspective, it includes what we allocate and what we don't allocate. So the 450,000 we have now includes what we've allocated and what's not allocated. So from a high level perspective, that's kind of where I feel we're at. And again, I want to compliment our leadership in the past. They've set a great tradition for the village to be debt free. And when I looked at this and I said, wow, our reserves went down $100,000 this year, and that's my first year being mayor. So what did I do wrong? So fortunately, it wasn't me. But anyway, I wanted everybody to spend a little time on the high level things. And before we get to ask Sarah to give us what you can on revenues tonight, are there any other major expenses that you know that we may have coming up that would come out of the general fund or the water fund?
Jeff mentioned. Jeff, you want to talk about the meter?
Yeah. So we have the meter reads that we started putting in 2007. I think at that time it was a $250,000 project. So these are all new meters plus the radio read equipment. So every house, 680, whatever, 681. So the manufacturer says those radio read batteries, transmitters will work for 15 to 20 years, maybe 30. Nobody really knows. But we put them in and started in 2007. So it's time to make a plan for replacement. And I've talked with Dave and I've talked with Joe. So to replace all those, we're looking at $105,000. And I think the plan is amongst ourselves that that's a 10-year deal. They're not all going to fail at once. They're going to fail a little at a time over the next 10 years. So I think one of the solutions was to raise the water rates 3.5% for 10 years, which would give you 115,000, something like that. But I've done some more research, and I want to throw this idea out at you. So the city of Bloomington charges a water meter fee. So if you take the 681 customers and you charge a $2.50 fee for a meter fee monthly, you come out to $24,000. a year. And that's at $2.50. At $5, it's 48. But what that does, it doesn't take a percentage of the profit or the sales of water. It's not based on the percentage of water sales. So if something were to happen and those sales will go up and down, proposing the $2.50 fee for the meter is a constant. So I haven't talked with Dave or Joe about any of this, but I'm just doing some research how other municipalities bank for those meters. And that sure sounds like a good idea to me. And so I'll just throw that out there for discussion.
I personally like when things are clear what you're getting billed for. I like that idea of just having a line item that says, you know, the meter costs us $2.50, you know.
Yeah,
instead of
it's not based on a percentage at that point. It's $2.50.
I like that, yeah, personally.
I agree.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense because you can always justify it also because it's part of the maintenance of this. That's why we're building up the money that we need to replace the batteries and everything else. Yeah, it's simple, it's easy to explain, and I like the idea. I think it's a great idea thought of, Joe.
Well, I stole it from somebody else, but that's all right.
Don't say that.
So it'd just be set up in my opinion, it'd just be set up in a fund like the backhoe and dump truck and every other fund we have, and we just take that yearly. And the manufacturer, so as they start to fail, you know, if I get 5 or 10, I would just let them hang on to them in their warehouse and not warehouse them here. And that way they're fresh when I buy them. And I just replace them a little bit at a time. And I've been told they're all just going to go out at once. It's going to be over time, but it's something that the village needs to plan for.
And when you started out, if we had done the 3.5% water hike, we were looking at $10,000 a year.
Yeah. I projected out at 10 years and it was $105,000 or $110,000 after the 10 years at 3.5%. But that's based on water. See, the dump truck fund or the building fund, no, the dump truck and equipment fund 4 years ago or whatever, I think Phil was in charge. And we took the way we did that, it's on your budget sheet in your fund sheet. It says 3% of sales. So that's not 3% of profit. That's 3% of sales. So that's a different number from profit. You know what I mean? So that's how the dump truck and equipment fund got funded, was 3% of the sales of water a year. And then in May, Sarah takes that and transfers that over to that account. Where I think this meter fee is just more clear cut. It's not based on any sales or profits of water. It's just a fixed amount and just kind of like garbage. It's just an added fee, and you always know it's $2.50 a month.
Okay, when we actually do the entire water budget, then let's have a good solid number, whether it be
Yeah.
2 months or 2 months or whatever it's gonna take for us to build up that reserve to start getting money in there, so.
Yeah. It'll be up to you guys to decide what the amount is. I'm just throwing out 250 because it's kind of the same number in the end as 3.5%. I mean, if you want to get there faster, you raise the 250 up to, you know, whatever you want, but.
Can I get a question? Is my thing on?
Yeah.
Okay, so how much did the meters, is it the actual meters or part of the meter that needs replaced?
It's the transmitter that sits on top of so it's the transmitter that's given us the information of your usage monthly. So we have a laptop and you'll see us around on the 17th driving up and down the road. You think we're just meandering through town, but we actually have an antenna on top of the truck that's picking up the signal from your meter in your house or in your meter pit. It's transmitting that meter to that laptop and then giving us the data to send out your bill.
Especially if it's in your battery.
Yeah, so I'm just not like, when we're figuring out how much for the meter fee, like, so every, we don't know how long, 10, 15, 20, 30 years. Like, the cost of that is gonna continue to go up, right?
The what is going to go up?
The cost of the transmitter is gonna continue to go up every 10, 20 years, right?
The price of the transmitter?
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
I think I had this discussion with Dave or somebody the other day. Technology, usually after, the first microwave was, $10,000, but now they're $90. And in technology, sometimes the price goes down because it's not new anymore. But I can ask the representative what he thinks is, going to be the future in that. I can't tell you that it's going to go up, double. I wouldn't think so. I would think that as technology grows, it's going to stay the same or go down.
Or they're gonna change it and make it better, and then it's gonna be.
Well, we've already seen that with our new laptop. There was there's a B transmitter and a C transmitter, if I remember right, Dave. But one has a little bit better technology and reads a little better, and so when we replace these, we're going to go to the better technology, but the price didn't increase, but $1 or $2 per meter or per transmitter.
Do you know what they, as of right now, like, say you had to replace them today, do you know what they cost as of right now per?
I think they're 150 or something. It's been a while since I pulled that stuff. I pulled it when we redid the laptop, but I think it's 159 or something like that for each transmitter, something like that. But I can sure find out for you if you want me to send you an email.
Yeah, I think it would be a good number to know, because then.
Well, we'll sure have it when we do our water budget meeting.
Yeah, gotcha. Cool.
Any other questions for Jeff on it is gonna be a major expense. Fortunately, it'll be spread out over years and a few years down the road, but it's also gonna take a lot of time to replace them. So, any other questions for Jeff on this? If not, does anybody have any other ideas on major expenses that we would have?
Well, I just want to bring up the, like on the sewer study.
Turn your mic on.
Thank you. Okay, no, I just wanted to bring up, like on the first page, it says major expenses for the sewer study. We'll have to take the TIF funds into consideration for that, because if it's within the TIF district, we can use TIF funds for the studies and the engineering and things like that. It'd have to be prorated for the percentage, yada, yada, but which can in the future be a substantial contribution. It's the same with the sidewalk to Dollar General.
Yeah, Jeff or Danny, either of you happen to know how many of the lots or water customers in Hudson are in the TIF district, or a rough guess, would you say maybe a third?
Or less.
Yeah, I would say probably a little less, maybe a third.
I think we looked into something before, and it was like 33%, don't quote me, but it was somewhere around like 30 to 33% is what you could do.
Okay.
Yeah, because the TIF goes basically the entire east, no, that's west, entire west side, all the way up through the fire station, basically. Takes up, the vast majority of them. Yes,
Now, that's a good reminder too, that TIP money may help pay for the sidewalks to Dollar General. We know some of it is not part of the TIP district,
that's correct.
so. But some of it is, so. Okay, guessing that there are no other major expenses. Sarah, you want to talk about revenues for a few minutes, or would you like to wait
If
till?
we can wait, I thought this was just kind of your higher level, I wasn't prepared to do that tonight,
Okay.
if that's okay, so.
Yeah.
If we can do it the next meeting, I can have it all ready for the general fund for revenue and expenses.
All right, we'll have a detail ready then for March on the revenues, and we'll do a lot of expenses. We'll do as much as we can in March to get it done.
I've already given the guys their sheets, so they should be pretty ready for March, for sure.
Okay. Before we get off the budget, I know, well, I was concerned about where we were going with the stuff that we got going on, because we got some pretty major costly things we're looking at. And when I saw our revenues, not our revenues, our reserves had dropped so much, it was a little alarming, and I wanted to get the board together so everybody understood where we were at on everything. So thanks to Sarah, I have personally have a lot better confidence in understanding where we're at financially and how we got there. So does anybody have any other questions on budget?
Just a
I have
comment.
one, the next budget meetings, are they set yet? So the staff kind of has an idea when we have to be prepared for our turn?
They are not set yet. I thought we set them at the March meeting,
Okay,
which is about 2 weeks away. We'll set them there, and we'll try and get most of the meetings done in March, so that we have April to fine tune and pass and everything.
okay.
Just a comment I wanted to make on that, on the budget that's being prepared by Governor Pritzker with the 10% tax revenue decrease. In conversation that I had with one of our local state representatives, I brought up that issue with him, and he said, well, Mark, that has to be passed and voted on. That's not a for sure thing. So you have to remember that. And I'm like, well, but we have to prepare our budgets, but that's not a for sure thing that's going to fly through, because there's a lot of resistance, IMLs against it. And a lot of the legislators are not really keen on taking revenue from municipalities, especially after the hit of COVID. So we'll see what happens with it. I don't know how we want to plan for that, whether or not we want to plan on a full decrease. I don't know, but it's just not a for sure thing. I just wanted to say that. So.
Yeah, thank you. You don't recall off the top of your head when the state's supposed to have their budget passed, do you?
Well, their budget's supposed to be passed because they have a July 1 fiscal year, but they've never, as far as I can remember, in the last 10 or 15 years, sometimes they don't pass a budget to November. They run without a budget, which is incredible to me. But yeah, it's supposed to be July 1 is when the state budget calendar kicks in.
So we may or may not have better information by the time we do ours, so. But thanks, that's a good point. I didn't mean to imply, obviously, we don't know what's gonna happen, but with the state being in the financial bind they're in, it wouldn't surprise me if they cut back some of what they would have given to us this year.
I just want to understand your spreadsheets on the general fund one. I get the top spreadsheet completely. That's the yearly budget. On the general fund reserves, like what is total liabilities and reserves and total deferred inflows? what are those, like,
Sarah, can you
Um,
explain that?
the general fund reserve table, that second table on that page,
Dave Frieda, let me look and see what he's got there.
what is total liabilities and total deferred inflows?
The total liabilities is the expenses still outstanding. I'd have to dig more into where the deferred info is exactly what they are.
Okay, well, if you don't understand it, I don't need to understand it, then.
Yeah.
So, okay,
It's from the audit, it's pulled from the audit.
okay,
And that's,
okay,
they create that, they do all of that, and that's where those numbers came
okay,
from.
so the reserve amount is what we have that year, and that's probably all we need to know.
Yeah, the reserve amount is what we have
Okay,
at the end of that year.
okay, okay. Thank you.
Auditors speak a different language.
Yeah. Thank you, no problem.
It's in the audit on about page 8 for this year, and most of the audits, it's page 8 or 9. And then it's got notes that explain some of the information on page 8 and 9. The assets are in notes 1 and 2. CDs are note 2. There's nothing specific on liabilities there that it talks about in the audit. But we just know that those are potential liabilities that, using generally accepted accounting principles, that they get counted as liabilities that go against your assets. Not a good answer, but that's the best. I will see if I can find anything in the notes on that too.
Okay, I don't, if I don't need to know, I don't need to know, it's fine, I was just trying to understand the table, so.
Okay, we have any other budget questions? If not, I'm gonna go to the next portion of the meeting, which is the closed session topic of a possible real estate purchase. So, and just as a reminder, during that session, that is all we can talk about. And we cannot do any voting during that session. So, do we have a motion to move to closed session?
Okay.
I'll second,
Roll call, Allison?
Joe Boyd,
yes.
Kathy Brooks. Yes. Lynn Norris,
Yes.
Bill Morris.
Yes.
Mark Patty.
Yes.